Welcome again to On Spot, where we keep you updated with the latest news. Here are the headlines of this week. His Holiness Pope Tawadros said that Islamist-backed constitution discriminatory against Copts. His Holiness Pope Tawadros II meets with delegation of Germany's Parliament CDU. 650,000 without power as blizzard recedes at northeast US. 2 Coptic Christians sentenced for stealing weapons in Maspero 2011 clashes. Egypt court bans YouTube for a month. Mass demonstrations against Morsi and the Muslim Brotherhood on Friday of departure. Starting with news from the Coptic Church in Egypt. In an interview with the Associated Press, His Holiness Pope Tawadros, Patriarch of the Coptic Orthodox Church in Egypt, has sharply criticized the new constitution, approved and passed last December. Pope Tawadros said that the constitution is discriminatory and the Coptic Christians are not a minority, but they are part and parcel of Egypt. He emphasized that Copts are a part of the soil of the Egyptian nation and an extension of the pharaohs and their age before Christ.
الدستور هو أبو القوانين ومنه بتتولد كل القوانين. ينبغي أن يكون تحت مظلة المواطنة وليس مظلة أخرى دينية أو غير دينية. إحنا في تراب هذا الوطن وامتداد للفراعنة والعصر الفرعوني قبل مجيء السيد المسيح. فوجودنا كأقلية شيء فريد. أقلية من ناحية العدد، أيوة من ناحية العدد ده شيء طبيعي، لكن من ناحية القيمة مش أقلية، ومن ناحية التاريخ مش أقلية.
His Holiness Pope Tawadros II met with Walter Korn, leader in the Christian Democratic Union CDU parliamentary bloc of the German parliament in Cairo's St. Mark Cathedral. Korn congratulated the Patriarch on his enthronement and discussed the current situation in Egypt. Korn led a delegation of 8 officials from the CDU on a visit to Egypt, during which they will meet with representatives of the Egyptian government, the Muslim Brotherhood, and the opposition forces. Ahead of his visit to Egypt, the German official had expressed the fears of the coalition over the recent developments in Egypt since the 25 January revolution. He added the recent violent events reveal the lack of entrenched democracy and that all communities and factions have yet to reach an essential agreement. A major snowstorm is hitting the northeastern US and eastern Canada, leaving hundreds of thousands of homes without power and paralyzing transport. Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New York, Connecticut, and Maine are all on an emergency state, with millions of residents being warned to stay indoors. The following report shows us more details.
Emergencies are declared in 6 states of northeast US as snowstorm leaves up to 3 feet of snow, hitting airports, highways, and trains. Meteorologists say the storm could be New England's worst for decades. Airlines cancelled more than 5,000 flights, including all those to and from the 3 major airports in New York City. And the train operator Amtrak has suspended nearly all services north of the city. More than 600,000 homes and businesses are without power in Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Connecticut. Also, nuclear power station in Massachusetts also lost power and was forced to shut down. Massachusetts Governor Deval Patrick has temporarily banned all non-essential traffic on the state's roads. Connecticut Governor Donald Malloy said, "People need to take this storm seriously. Please stay home once the weather gets bad, except in the case of real emergency." In New York City, which is expecting a 12-inch snowfall, Mayor Michael Bloomberg said snow-offs and 250,000 tons of salt were being put on standby. Hundreds of cars were stranded on the Long Island Expressway after motorists got stuck driving in the snow. They outnumbered the tow trucks and crews deployed in the area for the storm. According to the Suffolk County Police, rescuers have recovered many, taking them to warm places, but they still have their work cut out.
Turning to Egypt, hundreds of thousands of Egyptians protested in Cairo against President Mohamed Morsi and the Muslim Brotherhood on what is called the Friday of Departure. Rallies gathered in several areas throughout Greater Cairo, in Tahrir Square, and in front of the presidential palace. Female participation of both veiled and unveiled women was particularly strong, especially after many incidents of harassment deliberately that was occurred in Tahrir Square against women and girls to make them fear of demonstrating in the streets against the regime. And at the presidential palace, clashes were continued between demonstrations and the security forces. Sheikh Mahmoud Sha'ban, a Salafist sheikh and a professor at Al-Azhar University, said that according to God's law, it is legal to kill Dr. Mohammed al-Baradei and Hamdin Sabahi of the National Salvation Front, NSF. The NSF's calls to overthrow the government, hold early elections, and rejection the constitution were the reasons behind the fatwa. Dr. Mohammed al-Baradei criticized the muted reaction from the state towards the fatwa, calling for his and other members of the National Salvation Front, NSF's death. Vocalizing his critique on Twitter, al-Baradei wrote that when regime silent as another fatwa gives license to kill opposition in the name of Islam, religion yet again used and abused. From the governmental side, the general prosecutor, Mr. Talat Ibrahim, ordered to open investigation with al-Sheikh in that incident. Egypt's administrative court on Saturday ordered the ban of YouTube in the country for a month for not removing the controversial anti-Islam film, The Innocence of Islam. The court's verdict also applies to any website that aided in the sharing of the 13-minute film. Egyptian attorney Hamid Salim, amid rage and the protests, filed the lawsuit in September across the Muslim world, where hundreds were injured in Egypt after a film mocking the Prophet Muhammad was shared on social networks. Protests against the film had turned violent in some countries, leaving at least 70 dead, including U.S. Ambassador in Libya, Christopher Stevens. On 29 January, an Egyptian court slapped 7 alleged makers of the film with death sentences and American pastor Terry Jones a 5-year jail term in absentia. A criminal court sentenced 2 Coptic Christians to 3 years in prison for stealing weapons from soldiers during Maspir 2011 clash that left more than 24 Copts dead. The clash took place on October 9, 2011, when a group of Coptic Christians marched to the state television building to protest discrimination under the generals that ruling Egypt. The military has maintained the weapons were stolen from its soldiers and then fired at them and the protesters, causing the soldiers in the vehicles to panic. Last year, the army charged 3 soldiers who were said to have lost control of their vehicles with the wrongful killing of some of the protesters, but a military court acquitted them. Lawyer for the 2 Coptic Christians convicted, saying that they would appeal. The Maspir Youth Union announced that it will organize a march from Shubra district to the office of Egypt's public prosecutor. They will protest against the judicial decision. Thousands of Tunisians have attended the funeral of opposition leader Shukri Belaid, who was killed on Wednesday by a gunman who fled on a motorcycle after a fatwa from an extremist sheikh claiming that it's legal to kill Mr. Belaid. Sporadic protests and clashes have been reported all around Tunisia, and many workers are observing a general strike. Tunisian state television said universities had been ordered to suspend lectures on Saturday and Sunday, while France said it would close its schools in Tunis. Tunisian President Monsef Marzouki said that assassination should not affect Tunisia's revolution. He cut short a visit to France and cancelled a trip to Egypt to return home to deal with the crisis. He tried to diffuse tensions by calling for a non-partisan, technocratic government. However, his party has refused to accept the initiative.
Remettre un autre système politique, un autre système social à sa place, c'est quelque chose de beaucoup plus difficile.
German Education Minister Annette Schavan has resigned after university stripped of her doctorate for plagiarism. Düsseldorf's Heinrich Heine University voted last Tuesday to remove her doctorate following a review. Ms. Schavan, a close ally of the Chancellor Angela Merkel, insisted in a statement declaring the doctorate invalid and withdrawing it from Ms. Schavan. The faculty head Bruno Blackman said that they had decided by secret ballot by 12 votes on 2 with 1 abstention. Ms. Schavan had been scathing in her criticism of Mr. Gutenberg when the scandal of his plagiarism broke and that she could still fight the university's ruling. A computer hacker has stolen personal emails and photographs belonging to former U.S. President George H.W. Bush and his family. One photograph posted on the internet showed the 88-year-old Republican politician bed in hospital, where he was recently treated for bronchitis. The stolen emails are reported to include addresses and personal data of several members of the Bush family. A spokesperson of Mr. Bush confirmed that an investigation was underway. And from the Diocese of Los Angeles and Hawaii, which joyfully announces the consecrations of the holy altars in several diocese churches by His Grace Bishop Sarabian and His Eminence Metropolitan Hedro of Aswan. The consecration includes the holy altar at San Justina Coptic Orthodox Church in Rancho Cucamonga, California. The consecrations of the Holy Altar at San Mina Coptic Orthodox Church in Colton, California, and on February 17, the consecrations of the Holy Altar at San Damiano Coptic Orthodox Church in Bakersfield, California. Turning to some health issues, traffic fumes linked to lower birth weight. Pregnant women who live in areas with significant air pollution risk having babies of low birth weight. The largest study to date suggests that. The study in environmental health perspectives looked at more than 3 million births in 9 nations. The effect with small individuals should not be alarmed, but there was a notable impact on the population as a whole. The researchers said all that. Low birth weight babies have a higher risk of health problems and death. The majority survive, but have an increased risk of developing conditions such as diabetes and heart disease as adults. Finally, a funny story about a dad pays daughter $200 to quit Facebook. How do you get a teenager to volunteer to quit Facebook? Apparently, with cold, hard cash. A Boston father is paying his 14-year-old daughter $200 to quit using the social site for almost 5 months. According to a post on his blog on Tuesday, Paul Bayer, a research consultant from Boston, posted an image of a Facebook deactivation agreement with his daughter. In the signed agreement, his daughter agrees to deactivate Facebook from the past Monday until June 26, which perhaps notably would be well into summer break for most schools. In return, he will give her $50 in April and the remaining $150 in June. Bayer gets access to change her password and deactivate the account. His daughter's one-word response on the line asking what she will use the money for. Stuff. That's for all today. We wish the best to all of you. Stay tuned and see you next week.